The 17th of February 2026. 3i Atlas just opened, and what's inside changes everything. 96 minutes ago, something happened that no one predicted. February 17th, 2026, 9:34 UTC. Multiple observatories detected a massive structural change in 3i Atlas. Not a panel opening, not a deployment event. The entire object opened. 16 panels, we've been tracking every single one, dilated simultaneously. The octahedral structure unfolded. What we thought was the hull was actually an external shell. And beneath that shell, we can now see inside, deep inside, into the core, into regions shielded for 3 months by 200 meters of structure. And what's visible now, what 17 telescopes are imaging in real time, changes everything we thought we knew about what Atlas is and why it came here. When a spacecraft opens its hull, you learn what it was designed to carry. When that spacecraft is 11.7 kilometers across, has been hiding its interior for 3 months, and opens itself completely 48 hours before closest approach, you're looking at reveal. Deliberate, timed, meant to be seen. Atlas didn't malfunction. Atlas didn't suffer structural failure. Atlas decided to show us what's inside. And what's inside is not empty cargo bays, not just reactor core, not equipment we'd recognize as machinery. What's inside is a city. Before I show you the Hubble imagery that captured the opening sequence in unprecedented detail, before I explain why the internal architecture proves Atlas is multi-generational colony ship designed for permanent presence, not temporary visit, before I reveal what the thermal mapping tells us about population density and which sections are occupied right now, I need you to understand what city means for interstellar spacecraft. Earth's largest ships carry hundreds. Space stations hold dozens. Atlas, based on internal volume calculations and what we can now see directly, has infrastructure for thousands. Residential blocks, agricultural sectors, industrial zones, all visible now through open panels in structures that are clearly designed, clearly populated, clearly active. In the comments below, tell me this. When spacecraft that's been closed for 3 months suddenly opens completely to reveal city-scale infrastructure with distinct zones for living, working, and food production. What's the simpler explanation? Coincidental structural design that mimics urban planning, or exactly what it appears to be, civilization in transit, mobile colony, self-sufficient society that traveled 500 years and is now showing us they're not leaving, because colonies don't visit, they settle. Let me start with the opening sequence because timing reveals intent. February 17th, 9 hours 34 minutes and 17 seconds UTC. First motion detected. Panel 1 on face alpha begins dilating. 32 seconds later, panels 2 through 16 begin dilating in synchronized sequence, not all at once, staggered by precisely 2.3 seconds between each panel, coordinated, controlled, choreographed. By 9 hours, 42 minutes, and 51 seconds UTC, 8 minutes, 34 seconds after initiation, all 16 panels fully open, each 380 meters across, each revealing internal structure previously shielded. Total exposed internal surface area, approximately 18 square kilometers. That's like opening windows on structure the size of small city. And what those windows reveal is city-scale infrastructure. Now, let me address what we see in the imagery. Hubble, Webb, and ground-based observatories all captured opening. Resolution varies, but convergent picture emerges. The interior isn't single vast chamber, it's compartmentalized, layered, structured into distinct zones visible through spectroscopic analysis and direct imaging. Outermost layer, agricultural zones. We see this through chlorophyll fluorescence signatures. Plants, growing plants. Under artificial lighting, the zones appear as elongated chambers running parallel to hull curvature. Each chamber approximately 200 meters wide, 800 meters long, 50 meters tall. 23 such chambers visible through open panels. Green fluorescence indicates active photosynthesis. They're farming inside the spacecraft, growing food for crew of significant size. Intermediate layer, residential and communal spaces. Thermal imaging shows these regions at 295 to 300 Kelvin, comfortable human equivalent temperature. Structural features suggest compartmentalization into smaller units. Grid patterns, corridors, what appears to be individual habitation modules. Urban planning at 1 kilometer depth from hull. Infrared signatures consistent with heat sources matching occupied spaces. We're seeing where they live. Deep layer, industrial and systems infrastructure. Higher thermal signatures in specific zones. 450 to 600 Kelvin. Too hot for habitation, too controlled for unmanaged heat. This is manufacturing, fabrication, the zones where 347 objects in the surrounding shells were likely constructed, where the anti-tail materials were synthesized, where the spray chemicals were formulated. Industrial base supporting the colony. Core region, reactor zone. Still, the hottest region at 720 Kelvin after recent expansion from 2.4 to 3.7 kilometers. Now visible through multiple open panels, providing direct line of sight to reactor's outer containment. We can see the layered structure, the concentric shells, the distribution of heat that maps to power generation and distribution infrastructure. This is city power plant, and it's designed to run for centuries. Let me walk you through the population estimates. Agricultural capacity is constraining factor. 23 visible farming chambers at 200 times 800 times 50 meters each. Total agricultural volume, approximately 1.84 million cubic meters. Using vertical farming efficiency similar to proposed Mars colonies, that volume could support 2,000 to 5,000 individuals, depending on dietary requirements and crop yields. But we only see chambers through open panels. The 18 square kilometers exposed is fraction of total internal volume. If agricultural zones cover 10% of intermediate layer, and we're seeing roughly 15% through open panels, extrapolate to full interior. Total population capacity could be 15,000 to 25,000 individuals. That's not crew, that's not expedition, that's society, that's civilization. The oxygen consumption calculations support this. We estimated 300 to 1,500 active crew based on atmospheric modifications and biosignature production. But that was conservative based on assuming minimal infrastructure. Now seeing city-scale architecture suggests upper end or beyond. If 3,000 to 5,000 individuals are actively managing systems, producing food, maintaining infrastructure that matches both oxygen consumption data and visible agricultural capacity through open panels. Now, let me address what this means for mission architecture. Multi-generational colony ship requires specific infrastructure. You need food production. You need living space. You need industrial capacity to maintain and repair over centuries. You need power generation robust enough for indefinite operation. You need waste recycling. You need social structures. Atlas has all of this. Visible, proven, operating. The original crew that launched 500 years ago from HD 3651 system. Dead. Long dead. Current crew is descendants. 5th, 10th, 15th generation, depending on lifespan. They were born aboard Atlas. They grew up aboard Atlas. This is their home, not Earth, not HD 3651. Atlas itself, mobile home, traveling civilization. Let me walk you through what opening means strategically. For 3 months, Atlas maintained closed configuration, hull sealed, interior hidden. Now, 48 hours before closest approach at 1,247 kilometers, it opens. Complete reveal. This is communication. We're showing you who we are. We're showing you we're not just technology. We're society. We're civilization. We're people. But it's also demonstration. Look at our infrastructure. Look at our capacity. We're self-sufficient. We don't need your planet's resources. We have our own food, water, power, industry. We're not refugees. We're not conquerors seeking resources. We're visitors with capability to stay indefinitely on our own terms. Or its preparation. Opening panels reduces structural mass, improves heat dissipation, provides direct access to internal systems for operations requiring external interface. If next phase of mission requires rapid deployment of assets from deep storage, open configuration enables it. This might be final preparation before primary mission objective executes. Now let me address the timing correlation. Atlas opened exactly 48 hours before closest approach, not random, calculated. At 1,247 kilometers altitude during perigee, Earth-based optical telescopes will have resolution better than 10 meters per pixel. Opening now ensures we have 2 full days to observe, analyze, understand what we're seeing. They want us to see, they want us to understand. They're giving us time to process before closest approach happens. But why 48 hours specifically? Because humans need time to respond, need time to assess, need time to decide. Opening reveals non-threatening infrastructure, agricultural zones, residential spaces, industrial capacity, all suggesting self-sufficient society, not invasion force. 2 days is enough time for world governments to analyze and conclude they're not hostile. They're showing us they're not hostile. That's diplomatic calculation. That's first contact protocol. Show capability without threat. Demonstrate technology while revealing humanity equivalent society. Give time for assessment before critical moment arrives. This is sophisticated. This is planned. This is first contact executed by civilization that's thought through every detail. Let me walk you through what xenoarchitecture analysis reveals. Human spacecraft follow engineering principles determined by our physics, materials, culture. Cylindrical pressure vessels, modular construction, separate compartments for separate functions. Atlas shows similar principles but at different scale and with different aesthetic. The agricultural chambers aren't cylindrical tubes. They're curved to follow hull geometry, optimized for volume while maintaining structural integrity. The residential zones show grid patterns but with geometric elements we don't use. Hexagonal close packing efficiency in some regions, radial arrangements in others, different cultural approach to space utilization. The manufacturing zones show thermal signatures consistent with high temperature processes but distribution patterns suggesting different workflow organization than human factories. Less linear assembly line. More distributed parallel processing. Cultural difference in how they approach industrial production. Even the reactor is architecturally distinct. Our reactors are dense, compact, heavily shielded single cores. Atlas's reactor is distributed, layered shells with power generation distributed across volume rather than concentrated at point. Engineering reflecting different cultural values about risk distribution and redundancy. We're seeing alien engineering that solves same problems we do, but with solutions shaped by different history, different materials, science evolution, different cultural priorities. This is xenoarchaeology. We're studying alien civilizations' material culture through their spacecraft's internal architecture, and it's teaching us their values. Long-term thinking, redundancy over efficiency, distributed systems over centralized, community infrastructure over individual optimization. Now, let me discuss what happens next. With panels open, continuous observation becomes possible. We can track activities inside visible chambers, monitor heat signatures changing as different areas activate or rest, observe patterns in lighting, suggesting day-night cycles for agriculture and crew, build comprehensive map of how they use their internal space. Spectroscopic analysis of interior atmospheres becomes possible. We could detect different atmospheric compositions in different zones. Agricultural zones might be oxygen-rich. Industrial zones might have different gas mixes for manufacturing processes. Residential zones show the breathable atmosphere composition. We detected 22% oxygen, 1,200 parts per million methane. But most importantly, we might see movement. Direct observation of crew. At 385,000 kilometers current distance, even Hubble can't resolve individuals. But we might see vehicles moving between chambers, groups of individuals clustered in communal spaces, activity patterns indicating coordinated work, visual confirmation that Atlas is inhabited, occupied, alive with civilization. We have 48 hours of observation time before closest approach. At 1,247 kilometers, Hubble resolution improves to 5 meters per pixel. Webb might achieve better. We could see individuals, see clothing, see equipment, see enough detail to determine if they're humanoid or radically different. See whether they look at cameras, see whether they wave. Let me make predictions. First, within 12 hours, comprehensive interior mapping completes. Every visible chamber cataloged, every heat source identified, complete architectural understanding of exposed interior. Second, within 24 hours, activity observation might detect movement. If crew moves visibly through open sections during Earth-facing periods, we capture it. First visual evidence of individual beings from another star. Third, within 36 hours, international response forms. Once world leaders see city-scale infrastructure and understand Atlas carries civilization, not just technology, diplomatic protocols activate. Question shifts from what is threat to how do we communicate with society visiting our planet? Fourth, at 48 hours during closest approach, panels might close again. Opening was revealed. 2 days of observation, then close for operational security during vulnerable close pass. Or panels remain open as continued gesture of transparency. Fifth, after closest approach, if Atlas remains in Earth orbit, open configuration might be permanent. This is us. This is how we are. We're staying. Get used to seeing us. 96 minutes ago, Atlas opened. 16 panels simultaneously. 8 minutes to full open. 18 square kilometers of interior exposed. Visible infrastructure. Agricultural zones with chlorophyll fluorescence. Residential spaces at 295 to 300 Kelvin, industrial zones at 450 to 600 Kelvin, reactor core at 720 Kelvin with distributed layered architecture. 23 farming chambers, visible supporting 2,000 to 5,000 population minimum. Extrapolated full capacity, 15,000 to 25,000 individuals. Multi-generational colony ship confirmed. Society in transit. Civilization that traveled 500 years, showing us they're self-sufficient. Not refugees, not conquerors. Visitors with infrastructure to stay indefinitely. They opened 48 hours before closest approach, giving us time to see, time to understand, time to accept. This is first contact protocol executed by civilization that planned every detail. Demand full release of all telescope imagery showing Atlas interior. Demand architectural analysis by international team including urban planners and xenoarchaeologists. Demand diplomatic preparation for communication with society-scale entity, not just technology. Atlas isn't probe, isn't ship. It's city, mobile city, traveling civilization, and it just opened its doors to show us who they are. 48 hours until closest approach. 2 days to understand. 2 days to decide how humanity responds when civilization from another star opens itself completely and says without words, "Look, understand, we're not so different. We're society too. Stay rational, stay vigilant, and remember that when city opens its gates, it's either invitation or demonstration of confidence." Atlas is confident. In 48 hours, we learn why.